stand before a map that is not ink on parchment, but fear in your blood and hunger in your bones, and you are asked a question that decides whether your days will be common or carved into stone. How far will you dare to draw your line? A small vision keeps you comfortable and replaceable. A vast vision terrifies you, and because it terrifies you, it wakes the men around you and makes them choose. Will they follow and be remade, or will they stand aside and be forgotten? Alexander learned early that a vision must be large enough to frighten and to bind, to make a man's pulse race and his knees steady in the same moment. If the horizon does not make your throat tighten, it will not hold an army together when the desert empties their canteens and the mountains turn their legs to lead. Thucydides wrote that the secret to happiness is freedom, and the secret to freedom is courage. The sentence is not gentle. Freedom is not granted to drifters. Courage is the price of a border that moves. If the map is the heart, the clock is the blade. Speed is not a decorative preference. It is an argument you make with time itself. Men who move slowly must buy victory with bodies. Men who move quickly buy it with thought. Alexander hammered into his marrow a truth that makes most leaders uncomfortable because it exposes their vanity. Size is impressive on festival days. Speed is decisive when the sun is dropping and the supply wagons are late. Caesar, who also spoke in deeds first and sentences second, warned that delay is a kind of folly. It charms you by promising more certainty if you wait, and then it hands certainty to your enemy instead. Momentum is not a mood, it is a weapon. You keep it oiled by acting before you feel ready, by striking before your rival has finished his speech, by turning decision into movement while the other camp is still consulting its pride. There are hours when preparation is a scholar, and there are hours when preparation is a coward in robes. Strike before your enemy finishes preparing. This is not recklessness, it is realism. You are never the only mind in the field, and every minute you spend polishing your perfect plan is a minute your adversary uses to harden his flaws into armor. Machiavelli lowered his voice and told you the thing delicate souls dislike hearing. It is better to be impetuous than cautious, because fortune is a woman and favors boldness. Strip the metaphor and keep the iron. Windows close, bridges weaken under hesitation. There is a time to count, and then there is a time to cross. If you insist on proof before action, you will train yourself to arrive at battles already decided in another man's favor. Lead from the front if you want absolute loyalty. Speeches from a safe hill produce applause that dissolves at the first arrow. Presence among the dust and the noise rearranges men's souls. They watch how you absorb fear and how you speak when wind and blood fill your mouth. Loyalty is not a spell you cast. It is a covenant you sign with sweat. Plutarch wrote of Alexander that he was wont to set an example of endurance, and that he shared toil and danger. Men will forgive every imperfection in a commander who bleeds where they bleed. They never forgive a peacock who struts behind them and writes letters about glory from a shade they cannot reach. A commander shares danger, not just orders. There are seasons when the only currency a leader has left is what he suffers in public without theater. You will be tempted to economize yourself while spending other men. That calculus pays briefly and then collapses with interest. The quick way to bankrupt an army is to demand sacrifices you have not rehearsed on your own skin. Seneca's sentence cuts precisely where it should. Fire tests gold, suffering tests brave men. If your courage exists only in paragraphs, the first hard hour will reduce those paragraphs to smoke. Walk into the cold river first. Take the first watch. Eat last. Fold your own blanket. It is not romance. It is arithmetic. Shared danger compounds into trust. Adapt strategy to terrain, culture, and circumstance. The maps on a study wall are liars because they pretend the earth is flat and obedient. Real ground punishes men who worship doctrine. Alexander carried Aristotle in his head, but he was ruthless about breaking habits when the land and the people demanded it. Thucydides did not hand you a poem, he gave you a manual. War is not so much a matter of arms as of money, and supply and topography, and the morale of tired legs. What works in plains fails in passes. What terrifies Persians amuses Scythians. The same formation that wins at noon will fail at dusk if fog arrives and the horse spook. Strategy is not a statue. It is a living thing that eats facts and sheds old skin. If you cannot change shape without losing your spine, the first mountain will turn your plan into an epitaph. Intelligence and planning win battles before swords clash. This is the quiet part that makes impatient men fidget. The head must do its killing first. There is no glory in comparing your courage to a wall and discovering that stone does not negotiate. Reconnaissance is courage with eyes. Logistics is courage with calendars. The man who knows where the river shoals runs, while others search for bridges. The man who knows which local feud can be turned into a treaty moves 2 provinces without touching his blade. Aristotle gave the schoolboy's version, simple enough to carry into mud. Well begun is half done. The other half is surprise, which is simply planning executed faster than your enemy can understand. Morale is as decisive as weapons. Treat men like engines and they stall in cold weather. Treat them like dogs and they learn to bite you. Treat them like citizens of the same destiny and they outmarch their legs. It is the men, not the arms, that produce victory, wrote Xenophon, who walked further with fewer and worse conditions than most men dare imagine. Morale is not the same as mood. Mood changes with weather. Morale grows when men believe their pain is purchasing something worthy of their name, when they see their commander accept the bill, when they are paid on time and praised for real work instead of empty style. A hungry army with meaning is stronger than a fed army without it. Feed both, and you will write cities into history. Respect local customs to rule diverse peoples. It is easier to burn than to bind. To govern is not to crush difference, but to choreograph it. Alexander understood that conquest without understanding is policing without end, and policing forever is a slow kind of defeat. You will be tempted to paint every new province with your favorite color. You will earn rebellion as your payment. Caesar's simple counsel holds. If you must break the law, do it to seize power. In all other cases, observe it. The law here includes custom, gods, dress, calendars, marriages, markets. Men will accept a new master if he preserves their mornings. Stamp out their mornings and you will spend your afternoons fighting fires you lit yourself. Reward loyalty publicly and betrayal decisively. Men learn fast from what you celebrate and what you punish. If you promote flatterers, your tent will fill with mirrors that distort your face until you cannot see truth. If you promote competence and courage, your tent will fill with results. Machiavelli's hard advice remains correct even when it offends your gentler instincts. A prince should make himself feared in such a way that if he is not loved, he avoids being hated. Soft sentiment breeds the cruelest outcomes because it teaches traitors that your patience is the safest place to hide. Reward loudly, punish cleanly, explain little. Let the calendar and the coin teach the lesson. Momentum is a weapon. Never let it die. You keep men moving by giving them a next ridge, a next river, a next city, and a reason that rises with the miles. The day you let the story stall, Doubts enter like envoys whispering amnesty in the ears of the tired. Napoleon, who learned from the dead and taught the living, remembered that the moral is to the physical as 3 to 1. Momentum is moral force with a compass. It is maintained by victories scaled to the season. If the great prize is months away, invent prizes each week. Gather small wins and you will find that the large rock moves because you have already rolled its little brothers out of the path. Boldness can compensate for inferior resources. This is not a license for stupidity. It is permission to stop apologizing for what you do not have and to begin weaponizing what you do. A smaller army moving fast against a larger army that is asleep is not smaller. A broke founder with clarity and cadence can take a market that a rich competitor neglected for years because boardrooms like guarantees and streets like speed. Fortune favors the bold, the old Romans repeated, not as a superstition, but as a recognition of tempo. Boldness forces errors. It compresses the decision cycle until a slower rival begins to guess. If you cannot be big, be sudden. If you cannot be sudden, be clever. If you cannot be clever, be honest and find the man who is. Control supply lines or ambition collapses. Feeds and roads win wars, not speeches. A campaign without grain is a poem recited at a funeral. Alexander stretched lines beyond what his predecessors thought possible because he understood that speed can lengthen a road by shortening time. But he never pretended that courage could eat dust. Seneca's sting hides inside a sentence, often misread as softness. No man was ever wise by chance. Success without logistics is chance dressed in armor. Chance will undress you in public when the carts stop. Count rations, repair wagons, pay muleteers. A stomach is not moved by rhetoric. It is moved by bread. Surround yourself with capable generals, not flatterers. The man who hates contradiction builds palaces of glass and staff meetings of theater. The man who loves the result more than his reflection invites correction at the table, so he does not have to bury men outside it. Men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands, wrote Machiavelli, and so they are fooled by polish. You cannot afford that indulgence. Seek men who tell you the truth without pleasure. Seek men who can be trusted with a wing of the army while you sleep. Seek men with victories that did not require your presence. Then pay them and restrain them in equal measure. Flattery lowers your guard. Competence lowers your blood pressure. Discipline must be enforced without hesitation. You will want to like everyone. You are not paid to like them. You are paid to hold a standard. Punishment for real breach must be fast and proportionate. Delay confuses the camp and invites debate about whether the rule is real. The best discipline is foreknown and evenly applied. If you spare your favorites, you build a private army inside the public one, and it will one day follow him, not you, when orders clash. Marcus Aurelius kept his counsel stripped to the frame. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Extend the line. If it is a rule, enforce it. Otherwise, it is not a rule. It is a suggestion scented with fear. Excess pride eventually undermines greatness. It softens your reading of the field. It edits intelligence reports until they match your self-portrait. It wastes time dressing victory for portraits, while the next threat sharpens its blade. Pride shouts when listening would save men. Pride seeks enemies to crush, not systems to improve. Plutarch warned that what we achieve inwardly will change outer reality, and the inverted truth bites just as hard. What we rot inwardly will ruin the outer too. Practice contempt for your own vanity, and you will find room for facts that hurt and therefore heal. Ambition without restraint invites destruction. It is easy to call restraint cowardice when you are drunk on applause. It is harder to call restraint strategy when your blood chants for another march. Many empires die not by lack of victories, but by lack of borders. Thucydides taught, with a historian's coldness, that self-control is the chief element in self-respect, and self-respect is the chief element in courage. A man who can end a campaign on purpose is a man who can begin another without ghosts chewing his sleep. Learn to stop while the shape of the victory can still hold the strain of peace. Even legends remain mortal. Time is limited. Do not use greatness as an alibi to ignore sleep, health, and the finite number of mornings left to you. Alexander burned years as if they were dry twigs. The fire was spectacular. It also went out. Marcus Aurelius, who knew that even emperors are borrowed, whispered the line that steadies vain hearts. You could leave life right now. Use that sentence to cut through noise, to reject pettiness, to choose the work that will matter when your name is a footnote and your face a coin no one uses. Mortality is not a threat. It is the frame that makes art possible. Unity of command prevents chaos. Debates are healthy before the march, and saboteurs during it. One voice must hold the final authority for direction, for timing, for the line you will not cross, and the bridge you will burn. Too many hands on a single tiller is how ships discover rocks. Choose counsel widely, and choose command narrowly. Caesar did not brag when he wrote, "I came, I saw, I conquered." He reported cadence. One subject, one verb, one result. If your camp cannot summarize the plan as simply, it is not a plan. It is a symposium pretending to be an army. A great legacy requires succession planning, not just conquest. Most men fantasize about beginnings. Few train for endings. If you cannot replace yourself, you have not built a kingdom. You have built a performance that dies when the star exits. Aristotle's instruction about ends belongs on your desk. The least initial deviation from the truth is multiplied later 1,000-fold. The deviation here is believing that your presence is the system. It is not. Build institutions that survive your moods. Train men who can contradict you without being exiled. Write procedures that work when read by someone who never heard your voice. Teach a philosophy that outlives your temper. Conquest is an event. Continuity is a craft. Now do what Alexander did when he stared at lands that had only been stories in other men's homes. Translate principles into movement so they can survive mud. A vision becomes a route when you choose a first city and a first date. Speed becomes real when you cut the number of meetings between information and action. The preemptive strike becomes ethical when you attach it to a clear aim and a clean reason. Leading from the front becomes daily when you take the hardest part of the shift and stop asking men to stand where you have never stood. Sharing danger becomes contagious when you stop explaining your courage and start spending it without a camera. Adaptation stops being jargon when you ask each morning what today's ground demands, and then you obey the ground. Intelligence becomes a weapon when you pay men to notice what you have trained yourself to ignore, and you reward them for saying it out loud in rooms where your pride would prefer silence. Morale shifts from slogans to food, pay, justice, and the dignity of honest praise. Respect dissolves rebellion when you keep old festivals and write new laws in old cadences so that people hear themselves in your sentences. Rewards and punishments rewrite incentives faster than emails. Momentum becomes policy when you plan sequences, not stunts, and when you stop congratulating yourself for one bridge while the river still runs. Boldness stops being costume when you choose the highest return risk available today instead of the risk that merely looks impressive. Supply becomes your religion when you count backwards from winter and stock summer accordingly. Teams become real when the men around you can surprise you for the better. Discipline becomes gentle and terrifying when everyone knows the rule and watches you obey it first. Pride is managed like a horse, bridled early and exercised often. Ambition is leashed to season and purpose until it can heal on command. Mortality is the clock that keeps your calendar honest. Unity of command becomes sanity when you accept that someone must decide and that the someone is you until you appoint another. Succession becomes quiet work now, not a crisis later, as you name, train, and test men who can carry weight without your hand on their shoulder. You want to know whether any of this is simply speech. The answer is in the small behaviors you repeat until they harden into culture and travel without you. Does the camp move on time? Do the books close accurately? Do the scouts return with news you did not want and still needed? Do the men sometimes laugh when you are near because presence does not mean terror? Do you sleep enough to judge cleanly? Do you say, "I was wrong," faster than your position makes comfortable? Do you change formation without changing aim? Do you drink last and wake first? Do you calculate the cost of a mile in shoes and grain before you demand that mile? Do you stand between your men and ridiculous orders from distant mouths? Do you hold your own mouth when tired, so you do not pour poison into the night? If you wish to carry a single line into the next decision, borrow a hard sentence from Xenophon, the man who walked 10,000 home. The sweetest of all sounds is praise, he admitted, but the surest of all strategies is prudence. Let praise visit you like weather. Do not count on it. Let prudence drive the caravan. Prudence here is not timidity. It is the royal combination of speed with aim, boldness with logistics, authority with example, ambition with offense, and a vision so large that it scares even you, while it steadies everyone who can still hear the drum in his chest. If the map shakes in your hands, that is good. Hands that never shake, never carry anything heavy. Look at the horizon long enough to feel fear become clarity. Then move with the burden of men's hopes on your back and the discipline of ancient sentences in your mouth. The world you want will not be given. It will be taken by men who are willing to bleed for it and wise enough to keep what they take. Write your name so that the land remembers the steps that wrote it. And when you are gone, if you did the work of a real king and not the theater of one, men you trained will point to the road you built and keep walking.